All right, let's jump right in. There's this question you hear all the time in business, right? What value is HR actually bringing to the table? It drives leaders crazy. But what if that's the wrong question entirely? So this whole explainer is inspired by a really powerful idea from Sylvia Ola, who puts forward this argument right here. It's a bold take, and it completely flips the script. It says, hey, maybe the problem isn't HR, maybe it's that leadership just doesn't know how to use it. Okay, so let's talk about this idea of value. So much of the debate is about HR having to constantly prove its own worth. But the thing is, that whole way of thinking is flawed right from the very beginning. I mean, think about how absurd this is. It's like going through with a whole wedding, and only after you've said I do, you turn to your new spouse and ask, so, what are you bringing to this marriage? It makes no sense. Hiring HR is a commitment, so questioning their basic value after they're already on the team is just as ridiculous. And here's the crucial part. Value isn't some report that HR can just hand you. It's not a list of tasks they checked off. Value is all in the eye of the beholder. It's determined by the person receiving the work. If leadership doesn't see the value, HR can't just force them to. The conversation has to start somewhere else. So what usually happens? When HR gets challenged, their go-to move is to pull out the spreadsheets, the metrics, the ROI calculations. But here's the problem, as we're about to see. Trying to prove your value with data almost never works. Now, I know this sounds kind of counterintuitive, especially for business people, but it's a known psychological fact. When someone has already made up their mind, throwing data at them isn't going to change it. It's like trying to knock down a brick wall with a pebble. So why is that? Well, first, you're up against something called confirmation bias. It's this mental shortcut we all have. If a leader already thinks HR is just a money pit, their brain will actively look for evidence that confirms that. They'll zero in on the department's budget, but completely tune out the data showing how HR's work cut down on expensive employee turnover. They literally see what they want to see. But wait, it can actually get worse. There's also the backfire effect. This is where you give someone solid proof that they're wrong, and it somehow makes them dig in their heels and believe they're right even more strongly. So that report you spent weeks on to show rising engagement, it might just convince the CEO that it's all fluffy stuff with no real impact. And this quote points to something even deeper. Sometimes this isn't about logic at all. It's about personal incentives. If a leader admits how valuable HR really is, they might have to change how they lead or share some of their power. So, it's just easier not to understand. Okay, so all of this brings us to the big pivot in the argument. If asking HR to prove its value is a total dead end, then we've been asking the wrong person. The spotlight doesn't belong on the HR team. It belongs on the leader who hired them. And this is the great reframe. We need to stop asking, what value do you bring, and start asking, what value did you, the leader, expect when you created this role? See the difference? The first question is an accusation. The second one forces the leader to talk about their own vision. What problem were you actually trying to solve here? Because that's the bottom line. If a leader can't even say what they hope to get by hiring an HR person, then nothing that person does will ever feel valuable. It's like telling someone to hit a target you haven't bothered to draw. It's just setting them up to fail. Now, to make this idea really concrete, there's a simple and frankly brilliant analogy that makes it all crystal clear. I want you to think of your HR department not as a person you're judging, but as a specialized, powerful tool. You, the leader, decided the company needed this tool. You went out and bought the best drill money can buy. Great. Now what? Because a tool is totally useless if you don't use it right. First, you have to define the objective. What are we building? Then you align on the strategy. What's the plan? You have to actually engage with the process. You can't just leave the drill sitting in the box. And finally, you have to use the insights it gives you. If the drill starts making a weird noise, you don't just keep pushing harder. And it all just boils down to this. If you buy an expensive tool, never read the instructions, and use it all wrong, you can't get mad at the tool when your project falls apart. The fault isn't with the tool, it's with the user. So this becomes the real question for any leader out there. Before you start questioning HR's value, you have to look at yourself and ask, have I done my part? Have I even used this tool correctly to get the results I claim to want? Most of the time, the honest answer is probably no. This all leads us to a pretty stark and unavoidable conclusion. There's no middle ground on this one. It's a binary choice. And let's be super clear, it's perfectly fine for a company to decide it doesn't want or need HR. That's a legitimate business strategy. The real crime is hiring them, bringing these talented people in, and then completely undermining them by refusing to actually lead. And this brings us to the final, blunt ultimatum. You either commit to using the tool properly or just don't buy the tool in the first place. Anything else is just a huge waste of time, energy, and money for everybody involved. So we'll leave you with this final thought. The value of your HR team isn't something they can prove to you on a spreadsheet. It's a direct reflection of your own leadership, your own vision, your own commitment. So the next time you want to ask about the value of HR, maybe the first place to look is in the mirror.